Well, howdy there, folks. James, Political Friar, coming to you again. I got the LSE hat on, so we're going to talk about something that's going on in international politics on this one. In particular, this possible border dispute come war in South America between Venezuela and Guyana. What the devil is up with that? Guyana is a tiny country, not in land area. It's actually huge in land area, but it's tiny in population, maybe 800,000 people spread out, really just in the one major settlement in the north in Georgetown and then along the river that runs through Georgetown. But out to the west of the major population center, there's this gigantic territory called Essequibo, and this territory is claimed by both Venezuela and the Guyanans through their colonial inheritance. Venezuela inherited its borders from the Spanish Grand General area to Venezuela, and then Guyana inherited its borders from a series of agreements between the British and the Dutch, and maybe a little bit of British land grabbing through creative surveying in the middle 19th century. So here's the basic history of the dispute. Both Venezuela and Guyana were settled about the same time and real early, 15th century stuff, like really right as Chris Columbus was getting across the ocean, you started getting settlers in the Georgetown area. And these settlers were combination Spanish. There were Dutch that showed up very quickly, and they established fortifications along the river where Georgetown is. Now, that colony, Dutch colony, lasted about 200 years, pushing back on both British and Spanish attempts to take it over until Napoleon kind of messed up Europe and the Dutch lost their ability to govern themselves. And in 1814, the Dutch gave the colony to the British. And they gave the colony to the British at its grandest extent, which means that there's two rivers that could be the border for Guyana. There's the Essequibo River, which is far to the west, and then there's the Orinoco River, which is just to the west of Georgetown. It's would make Guyana about one third the size of the country that you see on the map today, were the Essequibo region to be given to Venezuela. But how did this Essequibo region get claimed by Britain in the first place? Well, they sent a creative explorer to go map the border, and he moved the border. It was mostly empty land. You're not talking about a lot of people, but the Spanish had a pretty long-standing understanding of what was their territory, and the Dutch disputed it. But it wasn't really until the 1830s where Britain, the much, much, much stronger nation, just said, "No, this land's ours," and Venezuela could do nothing about it. Pound sand, Venezuela. You don't get anything. Actually, after Venezuela complained, this issue was eventually sent to international arbitration, something that happened with a degree of regularity during the 19th century. Powers would dispute their claims to a third power, a third party, who would then resolve it. Well, in this case, 1899 came around, and Britain presented its dispute with Venezuela to the United States as a reliable third party. And Venezuela wasn't allowed to put on a case. They weren't allowed to say anything. And the arbitrator, shocking, the arbitrator came down on the side of Britain. And so that's how you end up with the map of Guyana as is. Now, Venezuela never really has reconciled itself to this. And in 1966, they uh, brought it up in front of the United Nations. And that resulted in a treaty between Britain, Guyana, and Venezuela that said that this border dispute would be settled peacefully. In pursuit of that peaceful resolution, this case was submitted to the International Criminal Court as another independent arbitrator of sorts. In this case, this time Venezuela is able to participate in the proceedings, but it is still in front of the ICC when Maduro, the current president of Venezuela, says, "This is our territory. Maybe we'll just take it. Maybe we'll just take it by force." And he calls a referendum in Venezuela, and 95% of the very few people who took the time to vote said, yeah, yeah, let's go get it. And so you have this odd armed standoff between Venezuela, a country of, its population's dropped rather dramatically recently, but we'll say 8 to 10 million people still, in that range, versus a very small country of Guyana with 800,000. It's about 10 to 1. Who do you think's going to win if it actually came to a scrape? Well, the terrain isn't that favorable for an attacker. God knows it's just jungle. And Guyana would almost certainly get some Western military support if Venezuela actually tried to do anything, including potentially support from Brazil, who doesn't want to have any trouble on their border either. So I gotta say, the odds of Venezuela conquering this vast territory are real low. But rattling their saber, causing trouble, that's a thing. And that's worrisome. It's another sign of the basic international system maybe fraying at the edges a little bit. Now, I suspect that Maduro actually is doing this just for purely domestic political reasons. He's attempting to rally around the flag on a claim that Venezuela's had since Venezuela's been Venezuela. And so it's a good opportunity to rally some support before an election that's coming up. Yeah, an election in Venezuela. Why would he care? He's rigged the last elections. Why wouldn't he just rig this one? Well, he's worried. He wants as much legitimacy as he can get. At the moment, he's bought off the generals who have the guns to and the power to depose him if they wanted to. But having a legitimate election is a really good way to stay alive for Maduro. So he is interested in electoral politics despite being a unelected pseudo dictator. It's funny how that works. Anyway, now you know what the story is. In or South America, there, the northern part, and I hope you enjoyed that. Tell me about how wrong I am in the comments down below. Leave me, a like, hit that subscribe button, and know that I really appreciate you. Thanks.